All right, everyone. I'd like to call the April 15th, 2021 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals to order. In response to Governor Baker's declaration of a public health emergency and the related emergency executive order dated March 12, 2020, Town of Scituate public meetings shall meet remotely until further notice. This meeting will be recorded and can be viewed live on Scituate Community Television's Facebook page. The recorded meeting will be available the following day on Comcast Channel 9 and YouTube via the Scituate Community Television page. Participation in the meeting is available by Zoom with instructions for participation on the Zoning Board's website. We've called the meeting to order, and I would like to begin with our first application, which is brought by Robert Hogan of 202 Central Avenue in Scituate, requesting a special permit or finding in accordance with MGL 48 Section 6 and/or Section 810.2 of the Scituate zoning bylaw to allow the raising and reconstruction of a pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling at 202 Central Avenue in Scituate. We have the applicant or their representative available. Everyone is muted, so if you could raise your physical hand on video or raise your Zoom hand, we will get you unmuted. Do we see the applicant present? Looks like we have quite a few participants. No one is raising their hand. All right, we're going to, maybe we will, looks like we have a couple more people coming on. Hang on one second. Let me just check with them. Robert Hogan. I do not see a Hogan. Oh, that's Bob. All right. It's all right with everyone. I'm going to move our first application back in line, and we will go with our second application, which is brought by James Pascal of 20 Collier Road in Scituate, represented by attorney Jeff Ugino of Gellerman and Cabral, requesting an appeal pursuant to MGL 48 Section 15 and Sections 430.2 and 200 of the Scituate zoning bylaw, appealing a building permit dated February 2nd, 2021 to Leonard G. and Virginia M. Cubelis, owners of the parcel on Cliff Avenue designated as 64-5-2. Janine, we received a request from both counsel for the landowner and counsel for the appellant to continue this appeal. That's correct?
Yes, correct.
And fellow members of the board, I received, I was contacted by attorney Orenberger notifying me that he did not wish to be present. I told him I didn't think that was going to be an issue. And I would make a motion that we allow this continuance. My understanding is the continuance is because the landowner and the appellant are coming to some sort of agreement, and they're hopeful that the appeal will be dropped before the next hearing.
Second motion.
Second. There we go. All right, if we could have a quick roll call vote. Anthony Bucari, aye.
Tibbetts, aye.
Sixus, aye.
Harrison, aye.
And the ayes have it. That second application is continued to our meeting, which would be May the 20th. And then just to confirm, because I will be out of town on the 20th, Susan, George, and Ed, the 20th looks good for you guys?
As of right now.
Fantastic. All right, I'm going to bump our first application one more. I'm going to go with the third and see if we can give them a better chance to show up. quickly. We're going to move on to our third application of the evening, that of Perry Di Natale of 91 North Street in South Boston, requesting a special permit finding in accordance with MGL 48 Section 6 and/or Sections 470.6 and 810.2 of the Scituate zoning bylaw to allow the raising and reconstruction of a pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling at 10 Newton Street in Scituate. Is Mr. Di Natale or his representative available? Again, we just ask that the applicant or anyone speaking on their behalf raise their hand on video or using the Zoom raise your hand feature, and we will get you unmuted. Hello, Mike. There you are. Hang on one second. We are going to.
Yeah, sorry about that. The link was not working off the town website, so I had to literally type it all in.
Oh, all right. Well, thanks for making it.
So sorry about that, being late.
That's okay. So, Mike, what application are you here for?
I'm here for 202 Central Ave.
I got you. All right. We're going to come back to you in just one moment.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So I'm just going to remute you, but we'll get you unmuted when the time comes. So right now we are checking to see if anyone is here for the Di Natale application for 10 Newton Street. If you could please raise your virtual or physical hand with your video turned on, and we will get this going. We do have more people funneling in. This is the first time we've had this problem with some missing applicants. All right. Oh, we just got a. Again, for everyone, we got a handful of folks joining. Maybe there was some trouble with the link. We are looking for the applicant or their representative on the 10 Newton Street application. All right, well, we're going to pause that one. I'm going to move us back to our first application. Since we know Mike is here, we're going to move back and we are going to hear our 202 Central Ave application, which I called a moment ago. So, Mike, we've got you unmuted there.
Great, thank you.
Let us know who you are, your relation to the applicant, please.
Sure, Mike Biviano of Biviano General Contracting, where the contractor is hired to build the new house at 202 Central Ave in Hummerock. So this is a raise and reconstruction. The house will be built on wood piles and beams, elevated properly out of the flood zone. And we're here tonight because it's 20% larger than the old existing house that was there.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. I had reviewed this plan and didn't really, we got a lot going on in the plan. I think we got the septic and everything on there, but it looks like, is there any change to the footprint of the home from the existing footprint?
So the footprint itself is not too much larger, but it is. It was currently. It was only a story and a half, and now it's 2.5 stories. So it is taller.
And it looks like from my notes here, the right side setback, which currently sits at just under 3.5 feet, you're actually going to bring into conformity. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, correct.
And then obviously, as Ed likes to point out, you can't do anything about lot width and frontage.
Not in these lots, no.
That's it for me. George, I see you're unmuted. Anything to add?
No, I was going to mention that they're bringing the right side into conformity.
Great.
So,
Susan, Ed?
No, it looks like they'll be conforming in all the one nonconformity will be reduced that can be. Lot size, width and frontage can't be reduced. And other than that, it will conform to zoning. So I guess the only question for us is the 20% increase in size. And I think in the neighborhood, we've seen other houses that have increased in size. And this is a very modest house and not being created, it's not being disproportionately to the neighborhood increased in size.
All right. Susan?
Yeah, I have nothing. I agree with everything said.
Bob, we missing anything?
Bob's muted.
Bob is muted. Oh, Bob, here we go. I'm gonna try to unmute you. There we go.
Good to go.
Good to go.
So when the building department sees the drawings, we'll be able to evaluate height, 2.5-story building on piles, depending on the length of the piles. But I'm sure Mike and the owner are aware of the height limitations in zoning, and the project will meet those limitations.
Absolutely. It does. Yeah, the proposed height on the plan that's before us, Bob, is 33.8.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
No, that's quite all right. But so just to confirm,
Certainly fine.
does look like the proposal will conform there. We're going to be eliminating the only nonconformity that can be eliminated, as to the structure dimensionally, and then the lot is the lot, as we all know.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to open this up to public comment. I'm just going to give everyone just a minute or so if you would like to comment on the 202 Central Ave application, or if you have any questions, please raise your Zoom or actual hand.
Anthony,
Yes.
we did have a written correspondence. I don't think it was within our purview to address the concern, but did you get a copy of that? I think we got it today.
I got a copy.
That was a different address.
For a different application.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was this one.
Okay, also pilot.
Same issue of wood pilings, but a different address.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking it was the same. Yep. Sorry.
No, that's okay. So just from the public, if you could please raise your Zoom hand or your actual hand on video if you would like to speak as to this application. I do not see any hands raised. Give that just one more second. Otherwise, we'll try to keep it moving. We've got quite a few applications this evening. All right. We're going to close the public hearing, the public comment portion of this application. And I'll make a motion, since I have the plan in front of me, that the board grant the special permit for the proposed reconstruction at 202 Central Avenue in accordance with the plan drawn by Environmental Engineering Technologies and dated December 23rd, 2020. And further, that the board find that the proposed dwelling will not create any new nonconformities, and to the extent it intensifies any existing nonconformities, such intensification are not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Second.
All those in favor of Bucheri, aye.
Tibbetts, aye.
Teixeira, aye.
Harrison, I.
Fantastic.
I'll write that if you want.
Sure. Thank you, Ed. All right.
All right, thank you.
I mean, you guys tell me if I'm doing this right. Should I go back to the third or should I go to the fourth? Okay, thanks for all the ideas. We're going to go to the fourth application, the application of Michael and Kelly Mangiano of 20 Kelly Lane of Ladera Ranch, California, requesting a special permit finding in accordance with MGL Chapter 48, Section 6, and Sections 470.6 and 810.2 of the Scituate zoning bylaw to allow for the raising and reconstruction of a pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling at 42 Brunswick Street in Scituate. If the man, there we go. Tim Bennett is raising his actual hand, and there we go. Hello, Tim.
Evening.
Good evening.
You hear me okay?
Yes, if you could please let us know who you are, and then let us know a little bit about the application.
Sure. I'm Tim Bennett with Grady Consulting. I'm a professional land surveyor, and I did the survey for this project. Heidi Condon is the architect and actually...
Tim, I'm sorry. Is anybody else having a little bit of trouble hearing Tim? Yeah, Tim, if you could use your outside voice for me, even though you're sitting in your own home.
You bet. How's that? Is that better?
That's a little bit better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Heidi Condon, the architect for the project, filed the application. And as she and I had planned before, she was going to introduce the project and then introduce me so I could cover the site aspects, and she will cover the architectural aspects. However, I don't see her on the meeting here yet. So,
you know what, Tim? I think, to be honest, in looking at this application, I'm sure Heidi's lovely. I'm not sure how concerned with the architectural aspects we will end up being. I'd just as soon keep it moving. You let us know about the site, and then if architectural comments come up, we'll certainly look for Heidi.
Very good. Thank you. So I'm assuming that you all have a copy of the plan in front of you. And I'll speak as though you do. If you would like, I can share my screen with a picture of it too. So as you can see, the house faces east-west. The east side is facing the ocean, and the eastern third of the house is in velocity zone elevation 16. The western 2/3, roughly, is in the AE elevation 13 zone. The zoning setbacks are going to remain the same or get further away from the lot line. The north side, there is actually a small piece of deck that is at 7.6 feet from the line, and we're straightening that out and aligning the whole side of the building at 9.2 feet from that sideline. The sideline setback is 8 feet, so it's conforming. On the south side, the existing house is the deck is at 6.2, and we've actually aligned it to be actually more parallel with the lot lines and held it at 6.5. So we've decreased the nonconformity there. The deck on the east side or ocean side is going to be reconstructed above the existing one. So it's not the same deck, but it's at the same setback. The front yard setback, pardon me while I rustle some paper here, is currently at 52 feet to the existing deck, and we are planning to enlarge that deck on the side away from the ocean to a setback of 47.5.
And Tim, those decks are not roofed, right? They're uncovered decks.
Yes, that is correct. I want to just take a quick look at the architecturals so I don't misspeak, but I'm pretty sure that's correct.
And the reason I ask that is because a deck that is not roofed, that does not constitute a drip edge, would not have to comply with the setbacks.
Okay.
Whereas a covered deck, more of a farmer's porch would.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Try to be familiar with all the zoning regulations, but when you work in
that's what we're here for.
42 different towns, it's sometimes tough to keep track of them. So yes, and I just actually looked at the architecturals here at my desk, and I see that those are open decks.
Fantastic. And so am I correct in looking in that the gray on your plan is the home, is where we would have drip edges and whatnot. The orange would be all uncovered deck.
That is correct.
Okay. And then I did notice there's a zoning data on the plan, but Bob, please correct me if I'm wrong. The required setback from Brunswick Street would actually be 30 feet. Is that correct? Now, obviously, the home is pre-existing and non-conforming in that regard. But Bob, I have that right.
Yes, am I on? Yes. Yeah, it would be 30 feet from Brunswick, being the only named street bordering the lot. It's a little bit less clear what it would be from the passageway to the left, but certainly from Brunswick, that would be the conforming setback.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, we did have some fair amount of internal discussion regarding that issue, and our feeling, whether feelings count or not in this case, I don't know, but it seems as though that the house really appears to face the passageway to the west, and
Sure, so it is
facing Brunswick is very clearly a side of the house.
A common misconception about our code in that some folks interpret the front setback to be whatever the street is that abuts the front door of the home. But our code and our historical interpretation of the code is any portions of the lot that abut a street in the town of Scituate have that required front setback. Now here, I don't know that that's necessarily going to hurt your application at all, seeing as how the present home is 9.2 feet from it, so it's pre-existing non-conforming as to that requirement, and you're not bringing it any closer, and you're not. I don't think anyone would argue you're creating a new non-conformity there. So I'm not sure it's an issue here. I just did want to note that is the requirement there, at least, is 30 feet.
Thank you.
Given that, and I guess we'll quickly give you the chance to respond to it. We did receive a letter we actually received several letters of support on this application, I believe, with the application, which was wonderful. We did receive one letter from an abutter, a Ms. Susan O'Brien, who actually expressed some support for the construction plans, but did express some concerns as to the use of wood pilings as opposed to cement piers, was the term she used. And the way I interpreted the letter was that's because of potential damage to her home due to the disturbance and pounding of those pilings, for lack of a more technical term. As Ed raised before, that's not really something that the zoning board has purview over at all. Bob, I'd love to know if you have anything to add on this, but really it's almost a private trespass-like matter between landowners. Obviously, we always encourage landowners to work together and with each other whenever they can, but I don't know that the zoning board has the ability to enforce damage to one home due to pilings on the other, or to look better or worse upon an application because of the potential damage to another landowner during construction. Bob, did I get that right?
Yes, you certainly did. I would say in this case, pilings are probably the required foundation design. You're on a barrier beach, coastal dune, you're in a velocity zone. So as I understand it, both conservation and FEMA would need an extraordinary reason to allow any other than a wood piling foundation. As far as the disturbance during construction, I can certainly understand that. I would only say that many homes have been constructed using this technology. We have not had, to my knowledge, complaints of any substantial nature. I think that speaking with the homeowners and or their contractor, and if there's a particular concern, even taking pre-construction, pre-pile driving pictures of any areas of the abutter's home that might be of particular concern wouldn't be a bad idea. I know that has been done. And I wouldn't honestly anticipate a problem.
Thank you. Ed, George, Susan, anything to add on this application?
I do not.
I'd concur with Bob that the applicant might be, or the applicant's contractor might be advised to reach out to the neighbor who made the concern and document the current conditions so that any future concerns might be properly dispatched.
Fantastic. Susan?
Great.
I'm shaking your head. You're good to go. Okay, we're going to open up this to the public. Again, if you could please raise your Zoom or actual hand if you have any questions or comments on the 42 Brunswick Street application. I do not see anyone with their hand raised. We have quite a few folks in the hearing, which is great. Okay. We're going to close the public comment. And I'd ask if we had a motion.
Move to find that the application of Michael and Kelly Mangiano that the board finds the raise and reconstruct does not create any new nonconformities. To the extent that it may increase existing nonconformities, they are not substantially detrimental to the neighborhood, and that the 20% larger is likewise not substantially detrimental to the neighborhood.
I second.
All those in favor, Bucieri, aye.
Tibbetts, aye.
Seeks aye.
Harrison, aye.
Fantastic. The ayes have it. Okay. I can write that decision, Janine.
Okay.
No.
Thank you, board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
for
you.
your time.
All right. We are, sorry, my note-taking system has been befuddled by folks not being here on time. We're going to move on to our fifth application. We'll come back to our third. The fifth application is brought by Paul Knight and Stacy Pelota Knight and care of Walter Sullivan. They are requesting a special permit or finding in accordance with MGL 48 Section 6 to allow the raising and reconstruction of a pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling at 9 Bridge Avenue in Scituate. And I did see Attorney Sullivan in the room.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Walter Sullivan representing the property owners, Paul and Stacy Knight. They're with me here tonight, as well as the development team, which includes Greg Morrison, the architect, James Duffy. As a preliminary matter, Mr. Chair, I've been texted by Dick Rockwood, who I believe is on one of the hearings, indicating that although he's a veteran of getting into Zoom meetings with the Scituate ZBA, he is not able to get into the meeting this evening. I told him I would make that known to the board.
Would you be able to ask him, and it seems like perhaps there was an issue with the link that is on the site, but if you type the meeting ID, which only looks to be about 10 digits, into Zoom and then utilize the passcode, it looks like you are able to access the meeting.
I am texting him that now.
Yeah, the meeting ID and passcode, which are on the hearing notice. I think he should be able to get in, and we will We
I've
might
texted that-
verbally abuse him, but we will not penalize him in terms of his application for being late.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anthony, just a note. Sorry. The public notice for tonight was actually amended with a new Zoom link, and that may be the issue for some people.
I'll let him know that as well.
I didn't realize that the Zoom link changed on the amended notice.
Yes.
That is interesting. That's probably what some folks are running into. Thank you, Janine.
Welcome.
Well, Attorney Sullivan, why don't you go ahead and continue with letting us know about the Bridge Avenue application.
Thank you very much. So this is a 12,346 square foot single family lot in the R3, 12,965 square feet, excuse me. It's been improved with a 2,723 square foot home. My clients acquired title to the property in 2007. This is a 40A Section 6 where they seek to raise and reconstruct the single family home. The only nonconformities are of the lot in that it doesn't have enough width nor enough frontage. Obviously, those are not going to change with this new structure that's going to be built there, which will be 3 stories, but compliant with today's zoning and not exceeding the height. Greg Morris can share the site plan with you and bring you through the intended structure. But obviously, as I've indicated, there aren't going to be any increases in the nonconformity other than ones that exist with the lot. So if it pleases the chair, I'd ask Greg to address the proposed site plan.
Please.
Good evening. For the record, this is Gregory Morse, registered engineer, Morse Engineering. I'm going to do a share screen and put the site plan up for everyone to see.
Greg, can you share your screen?
It's popping up right now. Hold on.
Because if you cannot bring on it, if you're there, I need.
There it is. Perfect.
Excellent.
Okay. So on this screen here, this property located at 9 Bridge Ave. The property line is shown as the black bold line here. It's located in the R3 zoning district. The lot itself is entirely upland land area. It's 12,965 square feet. It was developed with an existing single-family home located right here centrally on the lot. The assessor's records show that the home was built in 1958. The lot itself is non-conforming with respect to frontage being at 85.15 feet, where 100 feet is required. And the lot width is required to be 100 feet. However, at this location, the lot width is 90.53 feet. Otherwise, the structure that was built here complies with all setbacks, front yard, side yard, and rear yard. The existing home is a 1-story home, approximately 2,723 square feet, which is the first floor and finished basement area. The proposal here is to add a 2nd story as well as a 3rd story. It would bring the total home to 5,098 square feet, which represents an 87% increase over what's there. All of the proposed construction lies over the existing footprint of the home. So we're not changing any of the yard setbacks. There's no change to the frontage, no change to the lot width at this location. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Greg. If you, when you get a chance, if you could just maybe leave it up for one more minute in case, I was able to, maybe you unshared your screen. But that explanation was so thorough that I have no questions whatsoever. Ed, George, Susan?
None.
My only question is it says it's a raise and reconstruct. It sounds like it may be an addition by adding on top of the existing. Are we raising or reconstructing or adding an addition?
I believe it's an addition of a 2nd story and a 3rd story. It's not a raise and rebuild.
I apologize for my imprecision divots.
No, I'm perfectly all right. I don't think that, I think it's a de minimis point, get to use my word again. But clearly if we're putting a second story on it, we're talking mostly here about or exclusively here about the more than 20% increase in size and not setbacks or anything else.
Yeah, that we agree with that. The only reason we're here is we're increasing the square footage by more than 20%, so that obviously triggers the bylaw. But I would suggest that this is one for an appropriate finding that we're not creating any more nonconformity under 40A Section 6. There's no intensification, and even if there was, it's not inconsistent with the neighborhood. This is a structure that is pre-existing as a single-family home. There's no nuisance or hazardous to the public, either pedestrian or vehicular. So we would respectfully request that the board make a finding under 40A Section 6 and grant the special permit so the project can move forward.
All right. Bob, do you have anything to add?
No, it's very straightforward.
I would agree. We're going to ask that if any members of the public have any questions or comments on the 9 Bridge Avenue application, please raise your real or virtual hands. I do not see any hands raised. I'm going to make a motion that the board find that the proposed addition to the home at 9 Bridge Avenue, as shown on the plan made by Morse Engineering and dated March 8th, 2021, does not create any new nonconformities, and to the extent it intensifies any existing nonconformities, that such intensifications are not substantially more detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood.
I will second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Bucieri, aye.
Tibbetts, aye.
Seeksis, aye.
Harrison, I.
I have it.
And I'll take this one, Tom.
Thank you very much. Attorney Sullivan, Mr. Morse, thank you as well.
Does Attorney Sullivan want to?
Or if Attorney Sullivan wants to write it, that's fine too.
I can get that to you by Monday. I had planned on submitting a draft.
Then
I'll send it by email to Janine.
terrific.
Appreciate it, Walter.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. We are going to move on to our 6th application. We will come back to the 3rd application, give them another bite at the delicious zoning apple. But the 6th application brought by Robert F. and Carol Howland of 30 Ocean Ave in Scituate, requesting a special permit or finding in accordance with MGL 48 Section 6 and Sections 810.2 and or 950.3 of the Scituate zoning bylaw to allow the extension of the rear dwelling at 30 Ocean Avenue in Scituate. And I'm going to shuffle some papers and up. I don't see anyone's hand raised. I'm just kidding. Jeff's hand is right in the camera.
That was pretty funny, Anthony.
You got to keep it light on these.
Yes. I couldn't unmute myself.
Attorney DeLisi, welcome to the party. And if you could please tell us a little bit about this application.
Okay, sure. So for the record, Jeff DeLisi, I believe Paul Marabito from Russ Engineering is on the phone. If not, I'm perfectly fine.
I will try to find him and assist in his unmuting.
My clients, Robert and Carrie Howland, are also in the audience as well. Just very briefly, I'm sure Paul will share his screen and walk you through the plan. My clients recently bought the property. It's located in the R3 zoning district. It's classified as a multiple houses by the tax assessor. The dwellings on the property were constructed in the early 1900s prior to zoning. It's a fairly straightforward application, but I just want to explain why we are proposing the addition. The property is particularly important to the Howlands because it's vital to the continued care of their son, Bobby, who has Down syndrome and various other significant associated medical conditions. And having just turned 21 years old, he qualifies for adult services, which he badly needs, which include live-in care by his caretakers. The second home on the property allows Bobby to avoid basically institutionalization and allows him to have some stability and privacy in an environment on the same property with his parents. So in order for him to stay there, though, it's necessary for us to construct a small 420 square foot footprint, 2-story addition onto the rear home to accommodate his care and the newly qualified workers who will care for him. A percentage increase in gross floor area is about 64.5%. The building is, as I said, pre-existing non-conforming. Its non-conforming is on the rear yard, where it's 3.6 feet off the rear yard in a 20-foot zone. The addition will not create any new nonconformities and will comply with the front, side, yard setbacks and the height requirements, which I believe it's going to be 23 feet in height, which matches the roof where it's at now. The lot is non-conforming only to frontage and width. We have 13,000 square foot plus in a 10,000 square foot zone. The addition doesn't intensify any existing nonconformities. And so that's pretty much the whole application. If Paul's not on, I can briefly share my screen if that's what the board would like.
I do not see.
If Paul is Paula Donahue, if you are there.
Yes.
Let me just share my screen. It's asking me to open my system preferences. Would you believe it? So,
Jeff.
yes.
If I may, I think your description of the situation at the lot was likely adequate. If we're having trouble sharing the screen, we can wait to see if any public comment requires it, and we can see what my fellow board members think, but I'm not sure that it's entirely necessary, especially if we're having any trouble.
Okay.
There's 2 homes on a lot. I think you explained well. The rear home on the lot, or I should say 2 buildings which qualify as dwellings on the lot, and the rear building sits approximately 4 feet from the lot line. You are adding a left to right or left side addition to that, but it is no closer to the lot line than the existing building it is being attached to.
That's exactly true. Yes.
I do, other than that synopsis, I don't have anything to add. Ed, George, Susan?
I have one quick question. I think I know the answer, but I want a confirmation on it. Does the number 30, in other words, not the rear dwelling, does that currently conform?
Great question.
West side setback, we have 7.4 to a covered porch.
Exactly. That appears to be that is the only other nonconformity, is the left side covered porch of the existing dwelling in the front.
Okay. All right, covered. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I have a quick question, not to complicate things, but this is not a 30A is not a accessory dwelling, correct? This exists under a pre-zoning condition, correct?
That's correct. So
it's 2 dwellings on 1 lot. That's also a nonconformity.
And we were provided the assessor's cards showing both buildings. I believe there are separate cards for each showing both predating.
Correct.
Yes. So they're two separate dwellings, not one primary dwelling and the other accessory. They're two separate grandfathered under zoning as opposed to the way we would do it these days, which is through the planning board as a special permit.
Right.
And that would be an accessory circumstance. These are two primaries.
Correct. There are relatively few of them, I think, left in town, but there are a number. There were, I don't know, we had a count one time of like 15 two dwellings on one lot, which I guess in its nature is a nonconformity now, but pre-exists. It usually was, as it appears this one is, perhaps a carriage house that may have had a caretaker, a chauffeur, stableman living in that property. It was converted to a dwelling at one time and prior to zoning. So we have two dwellings on one lot. I'm just trying to clarify. In my mind, that would qualify each of them, 48 section 6, privilege. Is that the contention?
Yeah. There's also the new change to 48 section 6, probably about 5 years ago, Ed, that says that structures that existed for the last 10 years are treated as if they're pre-existing non-conforming structures for purposes of zoning. So long, because there's I think a 6-year statute of limitations and a 10-year statute of limitations. So once those expire, if the use was allowed pursuant to a building permit that existed prior to that time, then essentially it's grandfathered in. So that's the other argument. I know I'm getting off track, but I concur with what you said just now.
It's belt and suspenders, but clearly it's an unusual situation and shouldn't be construed as being something that someone could go ahead and construct a second dwelling on their lot.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Pre-existing non-conforming structure.
This if it didn't exist, it wouldn't be able to exist on this lot.
Susan, are you good?
I'm good.
All right. Bob, anything to add here?
No, I think from the perspective of zoning, which this board obviously is looking at, we're fine. I'll want to know a little bit more about if it's in a flood zone and what that may mean to the actual construction of the building when we get to that point.
Yeah, it's not in a flood zone. Then I think it's note 2 on the plan. So I think we're good there.
No, well, okay. Well, we can clarify that, Jeff.
Okay, no worries. Yep.
Well, and it is within 5 feet of the lot line, so doesn't that kick into some construction issues, Bob?
It would, in terms of fire rating on the walls and percentage allowed of window opening. It's not a very onerous, it's not a high hurdle to get over.
Certainly not with the applicant's motivation. I think it's something that can easily be met.
Yes.
All right. I would ask any members of the public that wish to make a comment or ask a question as to the 30 Ocean Avenue application to please raise your hand on Zoom or on camera. We do have one, Mr. Peinert, who I am trying to unmute you there.
Okay. I think
you might have some speaker feedback.
I'm unmuted.
Have your phone on as well?
I got something there. I just moved it. I'm one of the abutters, and I think I know the answer, but I just want.
Mr. Piner, typically that happens when we have two things making noise. Maybe you have two sets of speakers on.
Okay, shut your speaker off.
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah, okay. How about now? Can you hear me now?
much better. Go ahead.
All right. I think I know the answer, but as you face the house, the addition is going on to the left side of the house?
That's correct.
Okay, that was my only question, because we're the abutter and there's not a whole lot of room. We have a similar carriage house that's oriented the other way. Our house was built somewhere around 1905, but I just wanted to be sure that it was going to be on the left of the house. So that's my only concern. And by the way, it's not in the flood zone. That street, most of that street is not flood zone, although a lot of the area is. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Piner.
Hi, my name is Stephen Faber. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mr. Faber. Just your address for the record, please.
Certainly. I'm at 11 Cherry Lane in Scituate.
Thank you.
I am the abutter that will be most impacted by the expansion, as today their existing carriage house is actually directly behind my next door neighbors to my left, who is unable to be here tonight, but had actually notified us of this meeting. Yes, I'm at 11 Cherry, and you can see that's the back of the carriage house, and now that's going to be moving over to behind my property. And the concern I have is that, I certainly understand wanting to do the right thing for your kids, but I believe that there is a better way of doing it that would not have the negative impact that this will have on my property as an expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming condition. That expansion is going to have a negative impact on my enjoyment of my property. And at the end of the day, we'll have a 2-story home that will be immediately on our property line, overlooking, directly into our backyard. And, we've got a pool and other things. And it's not something that we want to have happen. The expansion could be built closer to the proponent's home. It could be, diagonal. What certainly doesn't have to be 2 stories. Therefore, kind of looming over the backyard and using up light and air. If it's a non-conforming condition, we don't understand why it should be allowed to be extended as a non-conforming and impacting adversely, our property and our enjoyment of our backyard.
Thank you. Would the applicant or Attorney DeLisi like to respond on that comment?
Well, I was able to actually share my screen, so I think you guys can see the Mass GIS map, which matches your assessor's maps. The structure that we're talking about is here, and the addition would probably go out to about this far. So I think that if you look at Paul's plan, which is here, you'll see this property line. And so Mr. Faber's property is over here. I think his house is kind of set further away. And really the only portion that abuts his property is probably maybe a 5-foot portion in this general area over here. So while I recognize that it's more structure along the rear line, it seems to me that it's fairly de minimis amount of that structure that would actually be in their backyard. And I note from Mass GIS that their house is kind of set over here. So That would be my response.
Okay. I mean, my rebuttal reaction would be is that this structure is fairly large. It's fairly significant as it is today. It's impactful, but obviously it was there when we bought the house in 2013, and that's fine. This is going to be, it's as you've said, it's a 60% addition. Even though it only touches a certain part over my property, it certainly is very impactful from a visual standpoint relative to the addition of it, regardless of whether it's actually adjacent to my property or it's 2 feet the other way. And I can tell you that my neighbor, who unfortunately is in California today and is working now and unable to be on the call, was actually also very concerned about it at 9 Cherry Lane. She brought it to our attention. So I just don't, I think that if something is non-conforming, and, I'm a tax-paying citizen like everyone else, and my expectation is that the city is going to require people to produce structures that are in accordance with, with the rules. And I think that can certainly happen here. It doesn't have to grow in that direction along the back. There's plenty of room for it to happen in a different way. So that's my feeling on it.
I might add, Anthony, that I just wanted to remind the board that the standard here is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. So substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. And while it's a 65% increase, that's 2 floors of 65%. So it's really, from the standpoint of the footprint, it's probably only 30 some odd.
No, but it's 65% of each floor.
No, it's 65% total.
Right. So if you take just the second floor, it's 65% of the second. And if you take the first floor, it's 65% of that. When you add it together, it's 65% of the total.
If the board's interested, Paul's on the call. I'm not sure I agree with that, but
I think without needing to argue over the math or side with either the applicant or the abutter, it's quite queer from the plan that we're talking about an additional footprint of 20 by 21, and that's what's there. So that I'm not sure the percentage is vital for everyone to agree upon now. There are a couple of ways to do that math. Jeff, has any thought been given to screening or landscaping or plantings? Obviously, you don't have a lot of room to work with the property being roughly the structure being roughly 4 feet off the property line, but I believe you may have just muted yourself.
I did. I'm gonna.
All right.
I'm gonna die. So I believe that there's a fence in that location, so that provides screening now. If I'm wrong, certainly please correct me. And then it's not something that we would not consider. Be happy to consider screening. This isn't a situation that my clients are happy to consider anything reasonable. And as I look at that plan, screening, if we're able to fit it, especially in that corner, is certainly something that I would encourage them to consider. I also want to point out to the board that views, I think it was mentioned that it wouldn't look good. Views are not something that's protected interest under the bylaw.
Thank you, Jeff. Mr. Faber, anything else to add before we move on to some other members of the public?
Yeah, I just think the screening would be difficult because it would have to I mean, if it was like an abrevieties, it would take many, many years before it would actually do anything. And you can't really plant a tree and just kind of in a 4-foot zone. And the tree would just grow directly into the house. So it's probably not something that can happen because it's just too close to the property line, which is really what the problem is.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the public wishing to ask questions or comment on the 30 Ocean Avenue application? It does not look like we do. Before we have a motion, I do need to disclose that I am familiar with Mr. Faber through some of our business dealings. His office is a client of the company that I work for and a client of mine. I do not feel that that will affect my decision here. And unfortunately, Mr. Faber, as I would explain to any abutter, your points are very valid. They're points I would share if I was an abutter. Scituate has, and this board has, a long history of looking favorably upon this type of intensification. I do feel that this is an intensification. Our past findings have found that similar applications, and it's up to my fellow board members here, that this type of intensification is typically not found to be substantially more detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood. At the same time, we do very strongly encourage applicants and abutters to work together to mitigate property-to-property impacts whenever we can. With that, do any of my fellow board members have a motion?
I'll move to find that the application of Robert and Carol Howland of 30 Ocean Ave for an addition to an existing dwelling at 30A Ocean Ave in accordance with the plan prepared by Ross Engineering, dated March 10th, entitled ZBA Plan for 30 Ocean Ave. Does not create any new nonconformities to the extent that it may intensify existing nonconformities. It is not substantially detrimental to the neighborhood, and the vote and to grant the relief requested by the applicant.
Do we have a second?
I will second.
All those in favor, Bucieri, aye.
Tibbetts, aye.
Seeksis, aye.
Harrison, aye.
All right. Thank you. And Attorney DeLisi, would you be able to draw up that decision for us?
I would be happy to. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right.
George, I was saving your volunteering on this one, so.
All right, we're going to move on to our 7th application brought by Jennifer Duff of 41 Fay Road in Scituate, requesting a special permit or finding in accordance with MGL 48 Section 6 to allow the construction of a second-story addition to a pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling at 41 Fay Road in Scituate. And if the applicant or anyone appearing on their behalf could please raise their hands.
That's us? Is it us?
I think it may be. That's Ms. Duff?
Yes, hi.
Hi there.
Can you see me?
I cannot see you, but we hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
Now we can see
Hi.
you.
Okay. Hello. And my contractor here.
Hi,
Hi there.
how are you?
Very good, thank you. So why don't you tell us quickly what we have going on here?
Well, I'll just go ahead and, so basically the application is to put a partial second floor on the main part of the dwelling.
Okay, thank you. And so there's no work being done outside of the existing footprint, is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, I did see, so it looks from what I can tell of it, it looks like we have a 2012 mortgage plan here, and I was able to cobble together some other information. It looks like the lot is non-conforming as to frontage, lot area, lot width, and the front setback. We have did you folks write in the setback measurements that are on the application, or was that part of the mortgage inspection plan?
No, I wrote that in. So we recently had Morse out here and we had the property staked.
Yeah.
So when I measured, I just ran a corner to corner string and measured to the front of the foundation.
Yeah.
And based on current setbacks, I believe we were off by about a foot. But, putting the second floor on, we're maintaining the current setbacks. We don't plan to change anything.
Sure. So I'm just one member, but what I'd probably want to say is if we were building outside of the existing footprint here, I probably feel that we'd need a new plan to show us existing and proposed. Because we're staying in the footprint, I think that those measurements and the mortgage inspection plan are good enough for me. I just want to, because we have so many applications that fall into so many categories, I just wanted to clarify that. Here, I think even if we have an abutter that wants to challenge your measurement on the right side setback, I'm of the opinion that it doesn't really make a difference, because if the right side setback is 2 feet and you're staying within the footprint and that's your application, I'm not sure your measurement there matters. So I'm not trying to trust you to begin with, but it just.
Even if it were, we're coming in a foot on either side, just basically so we don't have to change the chimney flashing. So the roof, so we're actually in a foot on either side as far as the new structure.
So I'm sorry, just so I understand, your proposal is to build within the existing footprint or potentially less of a footprint?
Yes, exactly, less.
Okay, that doesn't change my opinion on the plan then. Given that we're talking about a second story addition in the same or a smaller in every regard footprint, I do not have any additional questions.
Thank you.
Susan, anything to add?
No, I don't. The clarification was helpful because I wasn't understanding based on the drawings, but that makes sense. Thank you.
Of course. George or Ed?
No comment.
I concur with Anthony's feeling about the plan, although we generally would require a stamped plan, and if this was anything other than within the existing footprint, because generally this kind of a finding will be that it does not increase any existing nonconformities. So whether that nonconformity is 8 feet, 7.6 or 8.9, it doesn't really matter if it is a nonconformity. It's being presented to us as not a nonconformity. But I'll concur with Anthony's analysis.
Bob, what about you on that point and any other?
Well, I would agree that in the case that you're using the existing foundation, already found to be pre-existing and non-conforming, but there's no possibility that that's going to be exacerbated, and you can't change the existing foundation or the existing lot size or the relationship between the two. So this looks pretty straightforward to me.
No, I would agree. It sounds like we're all on the same page on that point.
To Bob's point, it is being found to be non-conforming by front yard setback. It may or may not be non-conforming to right side setback, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, with the same or less of a footprint, I agree. All right, I'd ask that any members of the public that have any questions or comments as to the application at 41 Fay Road, can you please raise your hand?
Hello, Paula Donahue on.
Hi, Paula.
Hi, I'm at 43 Fay Road. I'm on the right side.
Thank you.
And hi, Jen.
Hi,
hello, everyone. My one concern is what you guys brought up is the chimneys. My house is 6 feet, my chimney is 6 feet from their property line. So if you guys are going up and we have an active fireplace over there, you know, I'm concerned what it will do to your safety and for the draft of my own chimney. I mean, we won't be probably 10 feet apart, your second floor to my chimney. You'll be looking at my chimney.
I think we're more than 10 feet apart, actually.
Well, it's more like 8, but it's 8 from the property line, so it would probably be more like 12 or more to your chimney. But the plans to build the ridge line it's only being raised 4 feet. So although we're going up an 8-foot wall in the front, the ridge only goes up 4 feet. So we're changing from like a 12 pitch to a 4 pitch roof. So we're only going up 4 feet on the ridge of the roof, which is pretty insignificant.
Okay, anyone from the board, anyone know? I just don't want to put anyone at risk here, whether it's Jen's family or our family. Is that up to snuff or I don't know?
So they are far enough from the property line, and there won't be any closer than they are now. I certainly can't speak to risk, but in terms of what we are able to regulate, they are falling within that. And Bob, in terms of, do you care to comment in terms of general building code?
Well, the building code doesn't really speak to this kind of lateral juxtaposition of chimneys or chimney with structure, but the code's regulations are that the chimney needs to be, if you've got a chimney and a sloping roof, which is a more typical situation, the top of the chimney needs to be 2 feet above the point where a horizontal line from the top of the chimney would intersect the roof 10 feet away. So if you're, I think if I'm trying to get the geometry in my head a little bit for this particular situation, anything over 10 feet, I would feel reasonably safe. You know, certainly there are cases I would strongly believe where chimneys are that close or perhaps even closer to one another on beachfront properties and places like that, which are tightly packed in the neighborhood.
Right, which for better or more likely worse are not all that uncommon in the town of Scituate, correct?
Correct.
So this is something that when they go through the building process, it would be checked by the building inspector?
Yeah, we'll certainly look into it. I don't foresee any problems, frankly. It's an interesting point, and I don't have an answer off the top of my head, but we will certainly look into it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. If we have anyone else with any questions or comments as to the 41 Fay Road application.
Me? What is that? What does all of that mean going forward? Is that going to hold things up?
I would be surprised if it did.
We're probably, I mean, even more than 12. We're 8 feet from her property line. She's probably another 4 feet at least to her chimney.
I'm on satellite, and I would look to agree. I think a good answer to that question is, as long as you comply with the building code, which of course you're required to anyway, it will not hold you up.
Oh, thank you.
So I think that's a good way to put it.
Okay. Perfect.
And we'll just give everyone else a second here. Any more questions or comments? I do not see any hands. And all right, we are going to close it down. I'll make a motion at the board find that the proposed second story addition at 41 Fay Road in Scituate, which is to fall entirely within the existing footprint of the home existing there today, and which is proposed to increase the square footage by 624 square feet, does not create any new nonconformities, and to the extent it intensifies any existing nonconformities, such intensification is not substantially more detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood.
I second.
All those in favor, Bucieri, aye.
Tibbetts, aye.
Seeksis, aye.
Harrison, aye.
Fantastic.
Tony, you want me to do this one?
I would love for you to do this one.
I will do this one. All right.
Just don't leave out a bunch of words like I did on the one I drafted today and make Susan's.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you very much.
So
You guys
much.
have a good one.
Take care. Done? Oh. So I can leave?
You can.
All right. Thank
The
you.
next one's going to be a real barn raiser.
Oh.
I think, help me, I think it's the third application that we leapfrogged, right? We're going to jump back to our third application from Perry DiNatale of North Street in South Boston for a raise and reconstruction on the property at 10 Newton Street. Is anyone available to speak on the 10 Newton Street application?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Yourself?
Not bad at all.
So we have an, Shelley? Shall I explain the project?
Yeah, yes, please, by all means.
Yep, so we have an existing one-story cottage at this location. We have a plan here from Stenbeck and Taylor. And we are maintaining our 8-foot sidelines. We want to raise that property, tear it down, and reconstruct a 2-story house. And it has a farmer's porch on the front and an open deck in the rear. We meet our sideline setbacks. The lot is undersized, which is primarily the reason we're here. Our house will still be 20 foot from the rear, 8 foot from the sides, and our farmer's porch is 19 from the front, but the existing house is only 14.7. So we've reduced that non-conforming on the front setback, and we are conforming in the rear.
Fantastic. And we're going from an existing 541 square feet to 984.
On the footprint, yes.
Fantastic.
Well, hold it.
Yes.
On the footprint or on the overall square footage of the house?
It's a two-story house. So I think we had turned in the calculation sheet that from Stenbeck and Taylor that had the math on it. I know that was done.
So what the board received is that the existing square footage, which we should, I guess, clean up our chart. We're looking for the existing square footage of the home, the living area of the home. What the board received is that the existing square footage of the home is 541 square feet, which is not a large home. So
Right.
is that correct, or is that just a footprint measurement?
That is correct on the existing.
And then the proposed square footage will be 984. That is living space on the proposed.
24 times 34. Hold on. 24 times 34. It's 816. It's 24 times 34 on the first floor. So it's 816 square feet times 2. It's a two-story house.
Okay, I just want to make sure we have that right, because that's a significant difference from what is on the calculation stamped by Richard's servant and submitted with the application.
Yeah. Does that say, well, I think with that application, the form that the town has, I've run into this before, it asks for the square footage, but it doesn't break down whether you're talking about lot coverage. Most of the sheet talks about lot coverage, but, and I don't have that sheet in my own file in front of me that you have.
Okay.
I understand.
But it is a two-story house, and it will be the 24 by 34, which is 816 and a total of 1632.
Okay. I need one of my fellow board members to help me out here, just because well,
I can help you out. The existing structure is shown on the assessor's map as having a one-story built in 1940 of 520 net area. That can be fine-tuned to the 541 as shown on the application. But when you're putting two stories on it, you have to include both stories. I can appreciate Mr. Rockwood's confusion with that, but from the board standpoint, the bylaw that is being addressed here is the 20% greater increase in living area, and square footage is referring to living area, not lot area or lot coverage. So what is the dimension of the existing living area and the proposed living area and the percent increase?
I think we're getting into another area here of whether it's the 800 and something number that Mr. Rockwood just gave us, or whether it's the 984 that's on the application. I think we can judge it as to the greater of the two, and I'm not sure that difference, while significant in a percentage standpoint, is going to have much effect on our view of the application.
I don't disagree.
And just to make sure I didn't overshadow it, obviously lot area, width, and frontage are staying the same, and the front setback, as the applicant noted, is improving and not quite coming into conformity, but it is getting better by about a foot. And the side setbacks will remain in conformance, I guess is the best way to put it.
I think it would be fair, though, to call Stenbeck and Taylor's attention to that we've enjoyed the fact that engineers put a chart on the plan indicating existing and proposed conditions. It helps in the application and record keeping in the future.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, they did provide the chart that we gave them, and it has its own engineering stamp, notwithstanding. But no, that's a good point. It's great to have everything in one place. George and Susan, anything to add? Any questions?
Nope. That was my question. And it resulted in some discussion. I'm good.
And the final is we're going from 520 to 1632? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, living space.
Bob, anything to add or anything to miss?
No. When we look at this for a building permit, there'll be some, view of the compliance with any flood requirements that may kick in, that sort of thing. It's possible that the Conservation Commission will need to weigh in on this because of its location.
Right. Thank you. I'd like to ask if any members of the public have any questions or comments on the application at 10 Newton Street. If you could please raise your hand either on the Zoom feature or on your video. I do see one hand raised. Hold on. We're going to try to unmute a very familiar looking zip code name.
Mute. Hello?
Hi there. Just your name and your address for the record, please.
Yes, I'm sorry, it just says 02066. I don't really know why it does say that, just.
Well, that's quite all right. If you could just let us know your name for the record.
Yes, it's Andrea L. Walker. I am a direct abutter. I have lived for the last 50 years at 6 Newton Street in Humrock. This is the property immediately behind my property. I do have some questions for you, and I'm wondering if the plan is available to be shown to you, because I think there are some questions in discrepancy with regard to the actual height of the property and the length and width of the property. I do want to point out to you on the right side, the current structure is 10 feet from my property line. It is being moved 2 feet closer to my property line.
And that is consistent roughly with the plan that we received. It looks like.
Yes, I understand that. However, the structure, as I have seen from the plans that were sent to the conservation from Stembeck and Taylor, show that this structure could be viewed by anybody in my area, at 6 Newton Street, as a solid wall, actually, a 2-story plus wall. With measurements going as high as 40 feet high by 52 feet long and 26 feet deep. This is a pretty significant jump. They're looking to create a structure here that's in effect 3 times and 2 stories high from what's currently there. I certainly wouldn't expect them to maintain what's currently there. However, it does impact my enjoyment of my living area significantly. And it creates situations that for the area, it's something that's of a deep concern to me. There's also something else on this, one of these plans. where it says a TBD. It says I'm asking for them to explain the elevation of TBD grade, which appears to be on the plan for the front of the house. That concerns me about runoff. I expressed this concern to the conservation when they met about this in previous meeting, because we do get flooding from the ocean down Newton Street. And it is significant, and it is easily coming into my yard, which is a danger for my property. The plan as shown does adversely impact the enjoyment of my home. It is going to prohibit any kind of natural light to the back of my house, a building of this size. And I'm concerned about that because ultimately that will affect the value of my property as well. I just think that the plan as presented does not conform to the size of the lot. And for that, it also, nor to the houses in the neighborhood, with the exception of the house at 3 Milton Street, to which 10 Newton Street backs up. And so for that reason, I'm very concerned about what the proposed plan is.
Thank you, ma'am. Just to respond on a couple of those points, and I'll certainly let the applicant respond as well. This lot is undersized, as are a great number of the lots in this neighborhood. And I want to make clear, and it deserves a clarification because it is unique in that Scituate does not have a bylaw relating to lot coverage. Scituate's bylaw limits itself and its purview to the dimensions from lot lines. And I wouldn't argue with anyone that said that our lot lines, our building envelope, how close we allow folks to build to the lot lines are perhaps too generous. But they are what they are, and that's what the board is here to enforce. And the proposed structure here will fall entirely within the building envelope, which there are many lots in the Hummerock neighborhood, and in looking at satellite, many lots in the very close vicinity to this property, which perhaps push the building envelope or exceed it. And in terms of lot coverage, it appears to me that this property, if built as proposed, is going to fall right in line with the lot coverage of some of its direct abutters, perhaps even your home at 6 Newton. I understand your concerns. I wouldn't disagree with them if I owned your property, but the fact remains that how far this property falls from each of the abutting property lines and the height of this structure will all be in conformance with the bylaw.
Well, what about the height restrictions? You can go up to as high as you want in this area. What is the actual height going to be of this property? The property on 3 Milton that went up was only supposed to be a 2-story. It ended up being a 3-story.
So the height restriction in Scituate is a little bit nuanced due to pitch of the roof, but it is 35 feet or a total of 40 feet. Do I have that correct, Bob?
40 feet to the ridge, 35 feet to a point measured halfway between the eaves and the ridge.
And the proposed structure here, which is noted on the application, and it will not be allowed to exceed that if that is how we rule on the application, is 31.1 feet to the ridge.
Which means that there's a potential for a 3rd floor.
There is the potential for them to build to 31.1 feet, which is just under 9 feet less than the maximum in town.
Well, they're at the maximum. It's 40 feet.
Well, if the proposal is for
on the plan?
0.1 feet, ma'am. So 9 feet less than the maximum. But I think what's important is that in terms of setbacks and height, the proposed structure is not asking for any relief from this board. It will be entirely conforming as to setbacks and height.
Well, there's a significant property area on the left side of that house. When it's being moved closer to the 6 Newton Street property, it does create this wall that prevents any type of sun, air, circulation, or whatever, which is a detriment to the property that I own and I've owned for 50 years and paid taxes on. I think that the entire structure does not conform to the homes in this neighborhood at all on Newton Street. And if anyone is familiar with it, they would notice that.
Ma'am, I do understand your contention, but I think it is very important that we make clear that your complaints, which I agree with many of, are really complaints as to our bylaw. Our bylaw allows a home to be built up to 8 feet from the property line for the whole length within the building envelope, and it allows that building built 8 feet from the property line to rise to a height of 40 feet to the ridge. You're making an argument that that is too close and too high. It's an argument that I think has a lot of validity, but that is our bylaw, and we are unable to enforce a greater restriction than that bylaw against any applicant anywhere in town.
Well, you're the group that makes the decision, and I appreciate it. And I'm not happy about it. I think it's something that needs to be looked at. Having lived here all these years in this beautiful area of Humrock, from the time when there were maybe very few families here year-round to current, it is losing its cachet. There is no question of that, with the monstrosities that are being built, and it's in a dangerous area. It's a vulnerable area, and it's too bad. I understand what you're doing, and it's okay. I get it. I just need to tell you that I think that at some point it would be beneficial to the town to take a look at that, because it's not the city. We're not the suburbs. We're a beachfront community, and it's sad to see it disappearing. I guess that's all. But thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. It's late. You've been all here for a long time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
It's Andrea Walker.
Thank you.
Andrea. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else with a comment or question on the 10 Newton Street application? It does not look like we do. Do any of my fellow board members have a motion? I'll make a motion. I would move that the board grant the special permit with respect to the, the raising and reconstruction of the property at 10 Newton Street in accordance with the site plan drawn by Stenbeck and Taylor Incorporated and dated March 9th, 2021, and that the board find that the proposed dwelling will not create any new nonconformities, and that to the extent it intensifies any existing nonconformities, that such intensifications are not substantially more detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood.
Second.
Thank you, Ed. All those in favor, Bucieri, aye.
Tibbetts, aye.
Dixis, aye.
Harrison, aye.
Thank you. The ayes have it. I think that concludes our 7 applications. We have quite a few people who have stuck around, and I think that is likely for our further discussion of the proposed harbor resident sticker parking.
Hey, Anthony, do you want me to write that one? Did we not decide who's writing the last one?
I skipped over that. Thank you very much. That will be helpful.
Yeah, no problem.
Regarding the harbor resident sticker parking, I followed up with some folks within town, and I did speak to the chief of police. The police chief informed me that, well, it's a complicated issue, as we all know, and we all talked about it. He did not take an opinion in our conversation that resident stickers were a bad idea. He didn't necessarily take a position that it was a good idea, and I didn't expect him to. He did mention it really because I asked the direct question as to enforcement, and he said that it would be another thing to put on the police department. The level of enforcement really depended on the complications and how complex the stickers that were created would be. And he also expressed what we all know. In the winter, if there isn't a storm, this isn't really an issue. In the summer, and if there's high tides or a storm, it's a big issue, and that it's a greater issue for all of town. I personally, and I think from our last hearing, the rest of the board agrees, and I'd love to hear from all of you. I think it's something that is worthwhile for the town to further explore. I understand the need. I understand the desire to have this option for overnight parking from the residents that live there. Unfortunately, I think it's a complex issue. I think it's not as easy as us just saying, oh, residents get a sticker, they're allowed to park overnight in Cole Parkway. But I think it's something that, for whatever the zoning board's opinion is worth, that warrants some more investigation by the town. I am not sure how much that opinion is worth, but I'm certainly willing to take some steps to find out. I'd love to hear from the rest of the board on that.
I won't be shy. I think it's potentially a good idea. I guess my question is this a traffic rules and regulations matter? I don't think it's a zoning matter. I think clearly zoning can weigh in because how we are required to enforce and how Bob is required to enforce the zoning regulations in town. Parking in Cole Parkway has come up frequently enough that addressing it as a concern is legitimate. I think we have standing in that respect. But I guess my question is it traffic rules and regulations? And if so, we could certainly file I would support a letter from the board supporting that they look into it. I don't know enough about it to support that they should enact such a policy, but certainly that it be considered.
Right, and that's a better enunciation of my opinions on it, Ed. I don't know that residents that live in that neighborhood absolutely should have the right to park overnight in Cole Parkway. I think there's a lot to think about there, but I do know that the reason that they don't have the right to park overnight in Cole Parkway should be clear. And I think that they deserve that. And maybe it is already, I just don't know that reason yet. And I'm willing to put my name on a letter that asks for some more explanation as to that.
Right. And again, so I agree with what's been said. Just to be clear, there is overnight parking in Cole Parkway. The problem becomes exactly what we've been discussing here, which is in bad weather, when there is flooding in the winter, et cetera, that many of those spots that are otherwise available to the public to park overnight are no longer available. And the only spots that are available are the ones that are otherwise restricted, and that individuals that park in those spots tend to get ticketed and possibly towed. Right. I don't know about the towing, but at least ticketed. And of course, the people that tend to park there are residents of that harbor area. Okay. So yeah, and I think it's a complicated situation. And I think I would support a letter to traffic rules and regulations to say, this has come up. It's come up in our purview as the zoning board, and many of the residents from that area have come to us as part of our decision-making process to talk about parking, and that it needs to be looked at again. And I think I think that's the letter. I mean, in a couple of easy ways.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah, I'm in agreement as well.
Bob, anything to add? As Ed mentioned, this isn't exactly down the middle of the fairway for the zoning board, but anything?
Not really. There's certainly all sorts of considerations. I think it's, in my personal opinion, a way needs to be found to accommodate resident parking. I don't know what that way is, but I think to talk about it in as many forums as possible is the way to go forward at this point, and to make the other decision-making bodies and persons in the town aware of the force and reasoning that we've seen, behind this effort. So.
Yeah, I think that's. I'm taking notes as we go through this here, and I'll take a stab at a letter. I think it's going to be a relatively short letter, but what's coming to mind is a letter from our board to traffic rules and regulations, and obviously copying the select board and anyone else that you think should be copied, stating that based on past applications and input that we've gotten from the public at our hearings, the zoning board would request that the town investigate creating some form of overnight parking in the Harbor District, specifically for residents of the Harbor District. And I'd probably want to add that the board recognizes that there very well may be complications that limit or nullify the town's ability to do that, but the board feels that some investigation into the possibility of that type of parking should be made by the town. Does that sound? I can work on some wording and circulate it for some edits, just as we would a decision. But does something along that line make sense to the rest of the board?
Yeah, to me it does. I mean, I would acknowledge that we know that there is overnight parking at Cole Parkway, but right. So that it does not appear that we didn't take that into account, and that the community doesn't take that into account. I do notice that Nancy is raising her hand. Nancy Conway is raising her hand.
Yes, and we will absolutely get to everyone there. Anyone from the board have anything else to add before we open it up? All right, I am going to open it up, and we'll start with Nancy. I would, I'd like to avoid starting again from the beginning here. We're on your side, and I think that's it. But please, if you have anything to add or any additional questions to ask that we didn't cover at the last meeting, please do go ahead. Nancy. Oh, sorry. I think I accidentally. There you go. Nancy.
Hi there. This is Nancy Conway.
Hi there.
Hi, 150 Hatherley. I just wanted to bring up, I do feel badly for people that have difficulty parking there, but also along the entire seacoast. Whenever there's a storm, it's difficulty parking. And when you purchase a property or rent one that doesn't come with a parking place, I'm not so sure that these people should be able to park on public land that is maintained by the town and take up spots in the summertime either. It's really congested in the harbor in the summer, as you know, so that's when the most use is. And it's difficult if you're paying mooring, slip fees, and whatever fees to the town to have a boat in the harbor. That's where you go to park. So I don't know that if somebody that bought a house knowing they don't have a parking place in excess of what they were initially approved of should necessarily trump any other taxpayers in town. So I just think that that's something that should be taken into consideration. And also, how do you define the harbor district? If somebody lives within a mile and a half, can they get a sticker too?
Thank you, Nancy. Your first point is valid, and we discussed that our argument at our last meeting. Bob, the harbor district is a delineated district. Am I correct?
There is a harbor business district, which is part of the zoning bylaw.
Yeah,
it's business, but not residential.
Thank you, Nancy. Just one moment. We'll let Bob finish.
That overlay, the outlines of that overlay, I believe, include all of the condominiums along Front Street and Cole Parkway and within the Welch Company area. I don't believe it goes farther up the hill, for instance, on Otis and Allen, than about the first, I'm going to say 3 or 4 properties. And then after that, it's just a residential 3 district.
Okay, I just worry that it opens up Pandora's box if you let some people that have gone into the condominium world, especially with the Mill Wharf construction going on that has been approved by the town, to have more people be able to apply for a permit and take up parking spaces that are also intended for the rest of the town. So there's limited parking space there. And I just think that if we're going to have developments in the harbor, then there should have already been permitted parking places. I understand that throughout the town during bad weather, we all have problems finding a parking place. Certainly, you know that in some of the flooding areas. So I wouldn't even point that as a consideration in any plea to get or guidance to get people parking stickers in the harbor, because I think that's null and void. That's all.
Thank you.
If I could just comment, I think one of the challenges we have here is that the existing businesses in the harbor business district commanded a need for a much greater amount of parking than the residences that have been approved in the condominiums as the harbor properties have developed. We've actually reduced the need for parking, but at the same time not offered the ability to park. I think that's where the challenge is. We're not trying to take any townspeople's rights to park in the area away, but in applying the zoning bylaws, the board was, in their wisdom, or actually required to find that the reduction in the need for parking by taking the theater out of the equation was less impactful on parking, and therefore a positive in the application. But then we gave no privilege for parking to those that less use, that less demand that was already presented on the parking. It just seems like we didn't have that avenue to address parking, and that's what we're addressing now. It's not a question of whether or not we're trying to create a new, greater impact or diminishment of available public parking. These projects actually reduce the impact on parking a great deal, and they have a right to park. There's no question. It's just whether or not they have it in any formal way that makes it easier. I don't think we're trying to take anything away from the people in town.
No, I'd like to avoid, because I think it's a very long conversation, and wasted is the wrong word, but I think that we could come to a great conclusion. We could get everybody to agree on this call, and it wouldn't make a difference, because this is not the body within town that has any power whatsoever over this type of decision. So given that, and given that we're coming up on 9 p.m., I'd like to avoid arguing or making points on the merits of whether or not resident parking dedicated in the harbor is a good idea or not. I think that the board is in agreement thus far that the town coming to a conclusion, that the bodies within town coming to a conclusion and being able to say to the public and residents, we've explored this and we're moving forward with it, we're explored it and we're exploring it further, or we've explored it and it's not going to happen for X, Y, and Z reasons, is something that the ZBA is looking to encourage or throw its support behind.
Great.
And Nancy makes some points. I agree with them or disagree with them. They make sense, and I understand where she is coming from. So that's part of the argument as well. And so with that, those sort of parameters in mind, Debbie, please go ahead. Hi, Debbie.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we unmuted you.
Okay, so Debbie Farrell, 124 Front Street. So in a way, from hearing what you're saying and so forth, I do think the zoning board has maybe not the actual decision on this, but we, like, as far as I'm concerned, with the reason why I'm here today in the past few meetings is because of the decision of the new development with that over at the Mill Wharf from the theater to go to the condominiums. So that was the nature of the reason why I'm here, because of the approval that was given, because I just got the letter today, actually, saying that that the zoning board has approved it. The concern is that I know, so we're a mixed use. 124 Front Street was a mixed use. We were part of a project back in 2001. We weren't privy to, I guess, parking due to the fact we're an existing structure. And the reason why I'm saying this is, kind of correlating from what Nancy said. So we were one of these developments that were not even a development. We were existing structure from way back when. And because it was I think it was 1900s, we were in 1930, I believe our building was here. And we didn't have parking. So we don't have parking existing. I think we're the only building in Scituate that does not have parking. So we do utilize Cole Parkway. That is our parking. And in saying that, we have to get home at night. It's not just the snow and all the bad weather and so forth. It is all the time because we have the boats there. We have, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's 1.5 parking spots per boat slip. And if you add that up, that's, a lot of usage right there. And so when we have the new approval for this, for the new Warner project with, and I acknowledge that we're going from the theater to lesser of parking spots. It's the same verbiage that was used back in 2001 from going 679 to 219, and it's the same exact verbiage saying it's going to be lesser of parking spots and less demand, but that's just simply not true. We still cannot get there during, whether it be starting in May, first Friday nights, and
You're muted. Oh, okay.
Sorry. So we acknowledge with the first Friday nights and starting in May right till October that we just simply can't get home at night. And I know we may be a special part of it because other people do have parking. They just don't have ample parking. They don't have more than one parking spots. So that is my concern over the fact that we just simply wanted parking stickers. We've gone to the board numerous times, and I know the majority of you know my name because I've been in the town hall looking up the town bylaws and have done a lot of research. And we just, for our particular development, we have been, in fact, I think, not looked at. However, we have a new development that is being looked at based on the same bylaw, 1988 bylaw, saying that it was an existing use, but it was in fact built in 2003. That Mill Wharf 1 and 3 was built in 2003. Where I guess where I'm going with this is that we need stickers of some sort. We can't be ticketed all the time. We can't be towed. It's getting costly, when it's a bad weather and so forth. We are being towed, not towed, we are being flooded. The overnight parking is only a small section. Section D, it's only a small section. Overnight, again, I think I mentioned this before, is that, nowadays with the remote everything, not everyone is has the 9 to 5 working schedule anymore. They're home. But prior to that, it was still the same. It was some people that worked overnights from 12 to 7 in the morning. They can't get back into the harbor because of the congestion there. So that is my concern over the fact that we just need to be able to get into Cole Parkway. We have letters because if we're over at the Mill Wharf parking lot, we have letters on our cars, and I just don't know any other solution other than stickers so that we're not.
Thank you, Debbie. I understand, and Kathleen, I'd like you to go ahead. I'd just like to reiterate, and Debbie, we got a good deal into some of the arguments on the merits again, really all of which were covered at our last hearing, all very valid points, and why the board thinks that the appropriate parties in town should give this some investigation. But I would ask that Kathleen and anyone else that's about to speak, I really would like to avoid us going over or even going over new matters on the merits of this argument. The board's wading outside of its waters a little bit here with this item. The board right now seems to be of the opinion that we're going to write a letter to the appropriate parties in town, asking them to look into this, throwing our support behind some further investigation. I don't necessarily want to continue a discussion of the merits of one decision or another right now at this hearing, unless any of my fellow board members disagree with that. And it doesn't look like they do. So with that, Kathleen, please, if you have something to add.
A couple things with the letter. So first of all, thank you. We appreciate your efforts in this. I'm Kathleen Baldwin, 124 Front Street, neighbor to Debbie, and I've been here since 2006 when it was not as congested. Not being from the state, didn't understand the zoning and things like that. And of course, I'm getting informed as things happen. So, and I think that's just the nature of any town that, changes and grows, is we all have to accommodate the new situations. But that being said, with your letter, just a couple tactical points. You were mentioning that you were going to say, even though we might know that the town can't do anything, I'm hoping we can just scratch that altogether and not even state that, because we don't know.
So, yeah, I can assure you it's not going to say that, because the town absolutely can do something.
Okay, good. But you know what I was saying? Like, I write every day. And I'm in HR, and it's like, put a positive before a negative, all that kind of stuff. So I'm really just cognizant of that. Sure. So I'd rather ignore all negative whatsoever.
I understand that you would like that, but I'm also the chairman of a board that doesn't get to make this decision.
Right.
I'm asking boards that do get to make this decision to add work to their already busy plate. So
okay, I got it. Good point.
That really the best, in my opinion, you're going to get from this board is us nudging the parties that can make the decision to think about it.
Right. So that's my second follow-on is what can citizens do to continue, you're putting your effort in. Is there anything I can personally do to assist with getting this, really to a decision of sorts and to be brought to the appropriate, areas of the government here?
Sure. So you're getting the ZBA to ask the select board and traffic rules and regulations to take a look at this. So that's certainly a start. And then beyond that, I am by no means a political theorist, but my guess would be your biggest power is your vote and your ability to suggest how others might vote and issues. And obviously there's town meeting. There are ways to get on the docket at town meeting. It's one of the best and maybe worst things about our form of government. But there is certainly an opportunity for residents to bring issues before the town in that manner.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, getting educated.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate it.
Sure thing.
I would also add, Anthony, that they could write letters to the Traffic Rules and Regulation Committee as well. So like most committees receive correspondence and are tasked with responding to the correspondence they receive.
Okay, great.
And meeting about it too. Meeting about it to decide how to respond, but then also responding. So
okay.
I think it's important to have a judicious thought of how to go about it. I think you can get on an article before the town meeting and with relatively few signatures is it 10 or 100. It's not much, but to get the support of town meeting can be an overwhelming hurdle. So to go there and say, well, then everyone can say, well, town meeting voted it down. That could shut you down the road. I think that you'll find that citizens in town who are serving on boards are anxious to solve problems where they can without creating new ones. So
Right. We appreciate it.
best of my understanding, it's rules and regs is where this really sits right now. And if you're not getting a satisfactory addressed, not solution, but if they're not looking at it, then selectmen, we can nudge them.
Great. I just didn't even know there was a traffic rules and regulations. So,
yeah, and there's actually a link where you can send an email to them. Contact Taylor Billings. So
thank you. Thank you.
I would go online and do that too.
Thank you.
And the only other observation I'd make is that Cole Parkway, in the 64 years that I've been a resident, has not been as highly regulated as it has been in the last 10. Someone, and I'm assuming it's rules and regs, came up with the parking layout for Cole Parkway with the overnight restrictions and the 1 hour restrictions and the B zones and the A zones and the whatever. And if they can come up with that, they can address other issues there, if that's the correct board. And to the best of my knowledge, that's the case.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Linda, from your muted video, it looks like you agree with much of what was said, and well, I'm mentioning you just to have the record note your support. And you're on mute. Sorry. I'm trying to unmute you. I'm not so good at it. There we go. You're unmuted.
Yeah, thanks. Nope, I just I agree with a lot of the things that were everything that was said here, and I respect that with what time it is, and that we are not going to rehash everything. So thank you for the tips for us to further our cause along. We certainly will contact the other people, and and we'll work together to try to get this resolved for us, because we are the only building, and there's only 7 residents homes in the whole town that are in the situation where there's absolutely no parking, and it was from before. It's not something that was new. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see anyone else looking to comment on this. Just to the rest of the board, I'm going to draft a very short bit of language to ask Janine to put on ZBA letterhead and direct to traffic rules and regulations and CC the select board. I don't have no pride in draftsmanship, so please go ahead and give Janine any comments that you have. I would make the statement here that I think the board discussing directly comments on how to best word this via email is not, in my view, a violation of the open meeting law. Getting the wording of this correct via email before we send it to another board in town, I think is within the spirit of the open meeting law. So I'd encourage everyone to just reply all to that email in this instance. And with that, unless anyone has anything to add on that, I would move to close our discussion on resident parking in the harbor.
Do you want to vote to approve, to endorse as a group?
I think we actually voted that at the last meeting. And do I have that right, or did we not? If we didn't and I'm misremembering, then we should.
I'll move that we endorse a letter from the board asking for further investigation into the parking situation and possible resident parking in Cole Parkway.
I would second that. And all those in favor, Bucieri, aye.
Tibbetts, aye.
Desai.
Harrison, aye.
Fantastic. So we will close that down, and I will circulate that letter in short order.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Janine, do we have minutes to approve? I'm trying to remember. Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
February and March.
Oh, that's right. Yep. I looked at those. I would move that the board approve the February and March minutes as previously circulated by Janine.
Second.
All those in favor, Bucieri, aye.
Tibbetts, aye.
Harrison, aye.
Oh, Sixtus, aye.
Fantastic. February and March minutes are approved. And with that, and recognizing how nice the kitchen of Heidi Condon looks, I would move to adjourn the meeting.
Do we have any, Janine, I'm not putting you on the spot, but do we have any outstanding decisions other than tonight's?
Just one. And I believe it's Hollett from last month.
I sent it today.
Okay.
So we're good.
Good.
Yeah.
Well done. Riding herd on us, keeping us in.
Yeah, no, awesome.
Inside of a month, so much better than the bad old days, I guess.
Well, thank you.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, SCTV.